Okay, so I'm Francesca Borgonovi. Theoretically, oh, sorry. No, don't. I'll put up the slides. Theoretically, Marco is listed as a presenter, but that's obviously not me, or maybe not obviously, anyway. So this is joint work between myself, Marco Paccagnella from the OECD, and Samo Varsik, also from the OECD. We were super excited because in the second cycle of PIAAC, we have data on the occupation of parents. I was so excited that I obviously wanted to do something with this kind of information. We have a provisional title. This is very much work in progress. So if you have any comments on what we should be doing differently, on what we should add and anything, just please either let me know at the end of the presentation or, in fact, email me or Marco or Samo after the event. So what, oops, no, okay, this doesn't work. Okay, this doesn't work for the other presenters. You need to click. Where we started from, there's a lot of literature on social mobility, and in social science research, whether you're psychologists, whether you're sociologists or economists, there is a lot of interest for social mobility. You want people to actually be able to move across social classes or occupational groups, and you really don't like that the position individuals have in society is determined by their parents. Maybe you are a lack egalitarianist, a la Dworkin, but that's kind of the framework. And why is that? Because our societies are, in a sense, organized around the idea of meritocracy. In other words, you should actually have opportunities in life that are due to your effort and your ability, rather than circumstances over which you have no control. Now, at the same time, we're in Germany. I was reading in The Guardian the other day that Birkenstock was founded over 100 years ago, and they are now at the 8th generation. And we are actually quite interested in these kind of dynasties. We like to shop in places that have been around for a very long time, and you start to think, well, if this baker has been making bread, bakery has been making bread in the same family for over 200 years, must be good. I mean, they must be very, very good bakers, right? So we thought, well, why don't we actually think about the complete opposite of social mobility? In other words, intergenerational occupational persistence, when the children actually end up following on the parents. Now, I talked about Birkenstock. I don't know if my pronunciation is good, probably not, but I want you to focus on a little town in Italy. I come from Italy. This is a town in the Molise region in Italy. And there is this group, when we think about intergenerational transmission of occupation, they make bells. And they have been making bells since 10,040. They are now at the 27th generation. And even today, we have 5 people in the same family, uninterrupted for 27 generations, that still make bells. These must be very, very good bells, right? So if you want, you can actually shop for very small bells and take one home. The link is there. But the idea is really to say, well, there is an element that we think of is not great about passing occupations and passing opportunities from parents to children, but maybe there are also things that are not so bad. So what about occupational following? Where does it come from? And what are some of the consequences for individuals and society? Now, in terms of what may shape occupational following, there may be genetic predisposition. Some people are genetically predisposed, maybe, to make good bread or to make good doctors or lawyers, or in fact, they have genetics that make them with very good skills to make bells. If that's the case, then that actually could shape the extent to which children inherit the same kind of occupation as parents. It could be about role modeling. If you see your parents engage in a specific occupation, you may develop tastes and preferences to do that. But it could also be because of nepotism, networking, and barriers to entry. These are on the negative side. Or maybe there are certain things that if you learn when you're young, actually you really develop good skills. And in that case, intergenerational transmission is a very efficient mechanism to actually do this. So in terms of effects for individuals and societies, it's not necessarily super clear if, from a theoretical standpoint, it's good or bad to have occupational following or not. There can be contrasting mechanisms, some positive and some negative. It could be that for the society there is an efficient human capital transfer, but there could also be misallocation of talent, if in fact it's about rents that accrue. Now, there is a lot of literature on occupational following, particularly for regulated professions. So there is a lot of literature out there looking at whether the children of lawyers are more likely to become lawyers, if the children of doctors are more likely to become the children of doctors. And it's most often in individual country contexts. On the other hand, if you actually look at the more sociological theory, it's do the children of professionals, a very generic kind of occupational group, are more likely to become professional themselves or not. Now, what we do, because we have data on the detailed occupations of parents and children in the context of PIAAC, we actually look at, and these are our research questions, if in fact intergenerational occupational transmission differs across countries. Maybe some people will say, well, Italy is a country with a lot of nepotism. Is Italy high in the rankings or not? Which occupations are more likely to be transmitted across generations? Is it really the lawyers and doctors, or is it different kind of occupations beyond the bell-making people? Do people follow in the footsteps of parents? Are they actually earning more? And this again could be due to different mechanisms which we cannot disentangle, but is there an individual benefit for following the footsteps of your parents? Do they actually enjoy their work more or not? And finally, who is it? What are some of the characteristics of those who follow and those who don't? Now, in terms of variable, I think it's the interesting additions in the context of the cycle 2 of PIAAC. We have occupational persistence, which is our dependent variable, and it's derived based on information on individuals' declared occupation, their own, coded into ISCO 4-digit level, but also the occupation of both their mom and their dad at the age at which they were 14. So what we can actually measure is just at one point, a snapshot, what is the match between parents and children. This could actually change over time, particularly when you have more complex work histories and parents could actually have been in different jobs. So this is, in a sense, an underestimate of the true potential occupational persistence. We have earnings, harmonized hourly earnings in purchasing power parity. We have job satisfaction on a 5-point Likert scale. We have satisfaction with life. In terms of independent variables, depending on the models, we actually use occupational persistence as an independent variable. We have skills. We use numeracy and the big 5. We have gender. We have educational attainment, immigrant background, and we have also where people grew up. Again, another new variable in cycle 2. You have at the age of 14 whether you actually grew up in a city, town, or village. Now, in terms of what we do, and we look at different measures of occupational persistence, we have ISCO 1-digit levels. That's what people would say, well, example, professionals, and we have 10 ISCO groups at that level of aggregation. For armed forces, because of data issues, we just use, essentially, that's 0, and we use the 1-digit throughout the different models. We have 41 different ISCO 2-digit level. This is, for example, health professionals out of the professional side. And then, which is really what we use in our work, we have ISCO 3 digits, that's medical doctors, for example, and that's, we have 122 different occupational groups for which we have at least 10 observations at the international level. So we make a big assumption, probably, that all the effects, sorry, this is a different paper that somebody else presented this morning using information on this, so scratch that. We look at, in terms of age restrictions, 21 plus, and we focus on individuals who are in work, and we do not consider when we have a small sample size. Now, here are some findings. What you see here is that the champion in terms of occupational following is Poland, and Canada is the country with the least intergenerational occupational following. In terms of, sorry, I switched the digits, so in fact it should be 3, 2, and 1. On average, across OECD countries, what you do see is that 7% are in the same ISCO 3-digit level of at least one of the parents. Now, my question is, and we haven't looked at that, what's the natural rate of occupational following? Why? Because in fact, if you randomly allocate individuals in jobs, you would naturally have some. But then what's the correct, and this is, I'm anticipating the very end, but no, it's not 0, but I reckon it's around 0.7, but the issue is which distribution should you be using? In the sense, is it the parental distribution or is it the children's generation distribution? And I don't know. Also, do you exclude, at the 3-digit level, you have some that you observe in the child, but not in the parent. Then what do you do about that? So sorry, I'm actually asking questions to the audience rather than the other way around. Anyway, so that's the rate at the OECD, at the average level, 7%. Of course, the more you go at an aggregate level, the higher this number becomes. So you have 12% at the ISCO 2-digit level, and then 28% at the ISCO 1 level. In terms of looking at country distribution, as I was saying, Poland, the highest, 12%, 17%, 29%, Canada, 4%, 9%, and 26%. In terms of basic characteristic differences, men are more likely to follow in the footsteps of their parents than women. Would you expect that? I don't know, but that's what we find. Individuals with low levels of educational qualifications are more likely to follow in the footsteps of their parents. So a lot of this literature in terms of looking at doctors and lawyers, is it really the big issue when you think about occupational following at the economy-wide level? If you look at what are the occupations where you have the greatest occupational following, well, perhaps not surprisingly, it's fishery workers, hunters, and trappers. Essentially, 56% of people who work as fishery workers have at least one parent who worked as a fishery worker. Why is that? Because people are not necessarily wanting to move that much. If you live near a sea or you live near a river and you are a fishery worker, that's probably also what you end up doing. If you look at a lot of the occupations with the highest rate of occupational following, that's actually a lot of people in the countryside that are essentially linked to land. When you look at medical doctors, that's 13%, university and higher education teachers, 7%, armed forces occupations, 6%. Now, what we could also do is look at different mom-son, mom-daughter, dad-daughter, dad-son pairs. And you can see some interesting kind of differences there. In terms of from fathers to son, you have fishery, mining, forestry, mixed crop, and gardeners. From fathers to daughters, You have a lot of medical doctors coming up. From mothers to son, it's family businesses. From mothers to daughters, domestic, hotel, and office cleaners, textile, fur, leather product machine operators, garment, primary school and early childhood teachers, and shops, salespeople. So this is the kind of things that we found in terms of transmission between dyads. Now, an interesting thing is that we have PISA data. And in PISA, we have the occupational expectations of 15-year-olds. And again, they're coded into ISCO 4-digit levels. And we have the information on the occupation of the parents. So we can look at whether countries in which individuals are more likely to follow in the footsteps of their parents are actually the same ones where young people expect to follow in the footsteps of parents. That's not really the case. You essentially have zero correlation there. That's not how I would think it would work, but that's, let's follow the science, wherever it takes us. In terms of, and this is probably where this paper is going to sink, where we were hoping to get was, well, let's see what happens in terms of earnings. Are they earning more? Are they earning less? As an OECD person, I can totally build a story around any positive or negative result, except there's nothing there, pretty much. So when you can look at adding a bunch of controls, particularly, I would say, in terms of fixed effects at the industry level and the broad occupational level, but essentially you do not see results. You do not have differences in terms of earnings. We then tried, and this is just for this presentation, we will try a lot of interactions here, but we just tried in terms of gender. Do you see a difference between men and women? Again, nothing there, but where we want to go is look at educational attainment, not necessarily of the adults, but of their parents, I would think, and in terms of numeracy. In terms of satisfaction with life, again, maybe we can tinker a little bit. It's at the margin. They seem to be a little bit happier in terms of overall life satisfaction, but not statistically significant at the 5% level. And in terms of satisfaction with one's job, nothing there. In terms of my biggest question is, as I said, what's the natural rate of occupational following? If anyone has strong views or great ideas, please let me know. How can we actually interpret differences? How can we try to disentangle these positive and negative mechanisms given the data that we have in PIAAC? And of course, in terms of assumptions and limitations, we have just a snapshot, as I said. So this is, in a sense, an undercount of the true occupational following that you could have in a society. And things can change over time, and we cannot account for that. Thank you very much.